I want to bring up a comment from a lot earlier in the stream, Ryan, because I know it's a conversation about Hayes, and I know the slower start he's had to the year. A question from Matthew about, is there a chance Kjerstad stays up over Hayes if he plays well? To me, I mean, Hayes is coming back up. Like it's not a question about that, but the question to me is, well, what do you do if Kjerstad, in his opportunities just is raking and he's hitting major league pitching? I mean, do you send him back down? Is there room for you? Oh, okay.
No, don't worry, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Is
I'm
there
just
room?
grabbing my bat.
He's just grabbing the wood.
Yeah, I'm just grabbing my wood.
Good. All right. Well, is there room on the roster for them to keep up Kjerstad with Hayes getting brought back up whenever he's healthy?
Oh, well, it's interesting. It's actually what I've been asked about a couple times here so far in the last 24 hours. There's always the chance that you never know what's going to happen. I think they even alluded to Hyde early in the season. And again, if you're not going to take my word or our word for it, why don't you listen to the manager about this? But Hyde was saying, he goes, hey, we have a lot of talented guys. And for a guy like Cowser, it's a luxury of players. And if he's swinging the bat, well, we're going to keep him in there, right? That was kind of alluded to early on. And was Cowser done? He swung the bat as well as anybody in the American League, possibly in all of Major League Baseball. He's up there on that list right now. On the flip side, Austin Hayes is a guy that the Orioles know what they have, right? And I'm not saying that if Austin Hayes isn't healthy or he's not playing well, yeah, his time was going to be limited because of some of their other options. But Austin Hayes has also proven what he can do over a large sample size. Now, if Heston Kjerstad goes bananas and is playing really well, it's going to drive a strong narrative in question. But you know what? The Orioles might just have to look at the rest of their roster. Now, I wouldn't be surprised in this case. They're like, well, do we keep Hayes and get rid of somebody else? Because I just don't. Hayes' value to me is something that I think people undermine. And we even heard this with Mike Elias. And he used the word calculus in describing this. I did not. But it's just because he's extremely more bright and smarter than I am. But we both can agree, veteran players know how to handle coming into different situations and roles. That's the one thing for young players that's hard. So if Hayes is asked to come back and there's not a spot, he would be okay with trying to figure out how to help the team and being able to come off the bench. While as you've seen other players who are young and they have a development part, not necessarily is what's going to happen. I'm actually, while we're talking about this, Kevin, let me pull up that clip. I'm going to find it on Twitter because that part I love, the conversation about prospects and veterans taking that extra role. I think Austin Hayes is going to have a place on this team when he comes back. But if Heston Kjerstad's playing well, you're not going to send a guy down that's absolutely hitting the cover off the ball.
Right. And these are the decisions that, look, Mike Elias has a lot of good problems on his hands in terms of figuring out who's up and who's down. And a lot of it does just come back to Baltimore's depth, is what I was talking about there earlier, where if Kjerstad comes and he's raking, he's hitting pitches, he's hitting homers, and he's doing everything that he's asked to do, it would be really hard for Baltimore to send him back down. But at the same time, you have a guy in Austin Hayes who, and we've talked about this for a couple weeks now, but we saw this kind of arc last year where he struggled early to start the year last season and ended up getting it together and put together a really solid season, a really good season. So I think for Hayes, you're not going to keep him down, right? When he's healthy, he's going to come back up. He's going to contribute. Now, the other side of this too is like you have Cowser, who is just unbelievable right now. Obviously, Tony Taters is doing his thing. Cedric has had plenty of moments this year. So it's about, if you have those five, if you're outfield, then obviously you want to throw Mateo in this conversation too, because they play him in center. But if you have those five plus Mateo, where is the playing time coming? Are you DHing some of these guys in certain situations over other guys just to get them at bats? Again, really good problem to have, because there are very little, if any, holes in this Orioles lineup, but you're going to have to find playing time for guys. And that's one of the problems both Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde has. But the good thing about it is that it's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have, Kevin. It's good.
Oh, yeah.
Is it good, Zach?
Good.
It's good.
It's good.
And Zach Lowther, friend of the show, friend of the program, sometimes as a guest when he's not on the golf course. But Zach, again, makes a great point, which we've all known. He's an all-star. He doesn't get benched because of a bad 3 weeks. And I 1,000% agree. And if Hayes comes back, he's not going to be benched, but you're asking about the questions of, are players going to have to get more time if they are playing well and you ride the hot hand? Yes. That's why Cowser had to wait his time And Cowser then, he played so well, you can't take a guy out of the lineup. Like managing 101. Guys hitting the shit out of the ball, I'm going to put him back out there until he cools off. And guess what? Colton Cowser hasn't cooled off. Austin Hayss unfortunately goes to the IL. And now Cowser's going to get more extended run. And rightfully so. He's swinging the bat extremely well. And to give context for Austin Hayss, because this is, again, what I love to do on this show, Austin Hayss in his career since his rookie year, where he only had 60 at-bats. We're not going to really count that, so I don't know if that was his official rookie year. I forget. But since his first full season up in Baltimore, which was in 2021, where he played 130 or more games the last 3 years, he hasn't hit below 250. Just giving you guys context there. He's averaged 22 home runs, 16 home runs, 16 home runs, and over 30 doubles a season at the big league level. Like, let that sink in and let that marinate. That's a lot of production that just because a guy's off to a rough start, and you heard Jerry Harrison Jr. talk about this, you play long enough, you're going to suck. What's Aaron Judge doing again, Zach? Repeat it.
Last 24 at-bats, 1 for 24, 14 strikeouts. I mean, we're talking about one of the most dominant batters of the last 5-7 years in Aaron Judge. And he's doing this. He's getting absolutely dominated right now. But you know what? That's part of the game. He'll adjust. He's going to have probably in a week or two, we're going to look back and go, holy crap, Aaron Judge has hit 8 home runs in the past 10 games, because that's what he does. That's what makes these guys great, is despite the fact that they have these horrendous down, periods, they always mentally are able to keep going and get back on top.
Yeah. And also here, by the way, and this is who I was actually alluding to, that could be that the Orioles are going to have to look at. Where did that comment go?
Yeah.
Jorge Mateo is the guy that I always wonder, because you're talking about the infield play. And again, that depends on what happens with Jackson Holiday. It depends on what happens with some other infielders as well, like long-term here. But Mateo is a guy that, even though he does a lot of things well, it's hard for him to fit into the equation. And if you're going to have to choose between a guy like Austin Hayss and Mateo for an outfield spot,
I think that's where it comes into play of, I think Urias gets looked at first. And I don't want to say it's solely because of this, but in a lot of ways, I think it is. Jorge gets on base last night, steals second, steals third, infield comes in, Adley, 64 miles an hour off the bat, little bloop shot, would have been caught any day of the week if the infield was playing normal position. Instead, it gets an RBI in. And it's those little things that Jorge does. I'm not a massive Jorge Mateo in the outfield fan. I'm personally not a guy who feels comfortable with him out there. I think his speed, and he can get better out there. But I think his versatility plus just that game-changing speed is really going to make it hard for them. You're going to have to pry Jorge Mateo off this team, I think.
Yeah, but also, by the way, can people understand? Can everyone please understand that Cedric Mullins is the best damn center fielder right now defensively in Major League Baseball? And so all the times when they're saying, "Oh, we need to replace," no, I'm done with any type of Cedric slander on what you guys may think or not think. The dude is an unbelievable player for the Baltimore Orioles, and any team in Major League Baseball would want Cedric Mullins. Every team would want him because he's that dynamic of a guy, and defense matters. Look, I remember I was watching a play last night. Ball's at the center and it was loud off the bat, and the crowd's cheering, and it looked like it was going to be a hit. And then who's just right underneath it is Cedric Mullins. And even I think Jim Palmer's like, oh, I thought that maybe, the way it was off the bat, it seemed like it, was going to fall, but there's Cedric.
And he doesn't make it like it's not difficult. Like it's something where it's like, oh, Cedric is always laying out and making these plays. The plays that you see other guys having to lay out for and make these web gem plays for, you don't always see it with Cedric because he gets to the ball so quickly and he covers so much ground. He doesn't need to dive. He doesn't need to lay out. Like you said, I know exactly what you're talking about. Gap shot looks like it could potentially get a run in, and all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, oh, Cedric is literally camping under it at the end. Like the way he moves, his first step is so special. It's so quick, and he reads the ball off the bat better than anyone, I would say, in center field right now. And that allows him to, even when it's a ball that most guys would have to make a web gem on, he makes it look routine, and that's what people can't take for granted.